Attention shoppers, back to back blue light specials on aisle 57 and 58.
Welcome to Blue Light Special, the podcast for CPG brand marketers who want to lighten up their hustle in retail and real life. I'm Christine Wright.
And I'm Trevor Lewis. We're here to decode the mysteries of retail and give you some insider hacks to make your brand the talk of the shelf. Let's get into this week's episode. Welcome. Let's get into this week's episode where we explore how emerging brands can take advantage of events to get their brand discovered. And I'm pretty fired up about this episode. We got my man Justin joining us later on. He's a retail strategist who works with our Walmart team. He's our boots on the ground, and will be giving us some insights on Expo West. We're also going to make him share, what his favorite snacks were. Christine, I know that you guys have you kind of go a little bit far back with Justin. Can you give us a little bit more insight
I do
on...
go way back with Justin. At one time, Justin was a customer of mine, so that's a testament that if he's still sticking around after this long. But Justin is based in Bentonville, Arkansas, and has extensive experience in all things retail marketing, category, shopper, merchandising, retailtainment, packaging, brand. For the better part of the last decade, he has led business development for shopper agencies and service providers, including 3 years as VP of Business Development for Fetch Rewards. And his passion for the customer in-store experience led him to partner with In-Store Design Display in 2024, which we are very thankful for, to help bring best-in-class form and function to even more brands. So we usually start with a segment called What's Happening in Our World. And we know getting noticed in the CPG market is difficult. Budgets are being scrutinized, and it's hard to show ROI from events, most definitely. However, events can catapult an emerging brand from obscurity to being the new hot product. And there are ways to get noticed without big outlays for a booth. And I will say, I just had a meeting this week with an agency, kind of a consultant type agency, and they went to Expo West, just the team. It's a small team. They didn't have a booth, and they got their badges to walk the event from clients. So their spend pretty much was travel and staying at the hotel and food and things like that. And they said they spent a minimum of 12 grand just to do that. No booth space or anything.
Yeah. Well, there's no question that it's event season. I know that within, we'll jump in and talk specifically about Natural Products Expo West, but there's also South by Southwest recently took place down in Austin. Shop Talk. I know the folks in the pet space are attending Global Pet. I believe that's in Orlando.
Yes.
So it's definitely event season. These are always great opportunities to introduce new products to merchant teams, meet investors, brokers, suppliers, and if done right, create content and continuously generate awareness. So, as we talk more and really highlight some of the different things related to events, this segment that we continuously do on this show is called
Look what I have got for you.
Specifically about when you aren't able to make big investments in your booth, how can you still show up and make a splash? So I recently saw, one tip, regardless of if you have a booth or not, is you should definitely be leveraging these events to generate content.
Definitely.
And, there's a LinkedIn legend out there, Mark Samuel, founder of I1 Organics.
If you don't know him, I would be shocked.
Yes. Look him up on LinkedIn. He does a phenomenal job of just sharing his story, what he's doing.
Very
authentic. Yes. But he didn't have a booth, I don't believe, at Expo West.
I don't see Mark in a booth, no.
But he still found a way to leverage events, produce content. I have no idea what his agenda looked like, but I'm sure he had meetings with merchants. I'm sure he also has a podcast that he produces, I believe, weekly called Let's Eat. So I'm sure that he was continuously trying to find...
I know they had a big organized workout session just for attendees before the show, and Mark definitely participated in that, and there were a lot of selfies taken for that.
Yes. So again, this is someone who is looking at this event, knows that there's an opportunity for him to make an impact, but ultimately didn't invest in the booth space and was there for a day. So that's one way when you're looking at how we can get the biggest bang for our bucks. You don't always have to have a booth space. Another example would be hosting offsite events. So, this is looking at taking advantage of happy hours. I've seen people have rent like Top Golf. And because so many people are going to that location, most of the time they're really not that interested in walking the show floor and getting their booth badge scanned.
No, they want to have fun.
They want to have fun. They're there to enjoy themselves, especially, in today's world where they may have been, remote or hybrid. And so they definitely want to get some insight, but they really want to have fun, party, and enjoy themselves.
I know a lot of people walk around with their badges turned backwards just so they don't get
So they don't get scanned. Yes, they literally do that so they don't get scanned. So that would be another, if you're scrappy and how can you be creative, is you can definitely leverage it for offsite events. And I've seen some success doing that. I also think that there will be more. I've seen some of them start to play with hosting a 5K, looking at specific exclusive dinners is kind of a known thing. Yoga I've seen before as well. So all of those are different areas you could do, and again, still not have the investment in the booth. The other one is you can have a booth, but invest in a smaller space. So the way that the show provides space, they have very large, what they call island exhibits, and then they have typically around the parameters of the venue, they have what they call inline, so 10 by 10, 10 by 20. Oftentimes the 10 by 10 booth spaces are going to be the most cost effective. And you know this because you come from the trade show. I spent a few years in the trade show world. Yeah,
so you're very familiar with booth space.
I'm certainly familiar with booth space, and it's a fortune. Even at a 10 by 10 space, it's a lot. But if you there's a gentleman, Brooks Powell, CEO of Cheers. I mean, he is literally giving lessons for free on LinkedIn on how to deploy an event strategy, keep it lean. He actually, I believe I saw a post that he shared from Expo West where he had like a cost calculator. So he was transparent and of understanding exactly all of the input costs to get and attend the event. I think he even showed they was leveraging some frequent flyer miles to help reduce just the flyer cost.
And Brooks is an entrepreneur. He's definitely an emerging brand. I'm pretty sure he got a Shark Tank deal. He was at least on Shark Tank. So he's new to this, but he's leveraging every single dollar he can.
Brilliant. And when ultimately at the end of the day, it's about being scrappy and making a big impact with the least amount of resources possible. And so I know that there's another brand you was mentioning to me.
Yeah. Speaking of brands that had deals on Shark Tank, I'm fortunate enough to have a few on my roster of clients, one of them being Nightcap. It's a brother and sister college kids that started it out. They did get a deal on Shark Tank. But last year, Shara, the sister, she went to Shop Talk and no booth or anything, just walking the floor. She saw the CEO of Forever 21, Winnie Park, speak as a panelist. And she was just so intrigued by her. She walked up and just cold pitched her afterwards. And they are in 400 Forever 21 stores now. I think her whole point was don't be afraid to have a conversation. Cold pitch somebody. It's not going to hurt. And then she got in 400 locations.
Awesome. So again, there's a few quick ways that you can still look at the event, have a big impact without having significant booth expenses there. And I think the CFO will probably like you a little bit more because you're going to be a little bit conservative. So that's our show and tell for the day.
Well, without further ado, let's welcome the esteemed Justin Stevens to the podcast. Thank you for joining us, Justin. And you were recently at the Natural Products West Expo. Can you share some of the key insights and emerging trends?
Hold on. You got to at least tell us how many snacks you had in the first 30 minutes.
There had to be a strategy with the snacking.
There was a strategy that went out the window in the first 30 minutes. So going to the show in past years, I knew like you're trying a lot of products, right? You're getting handed waters, you're getting handed peanut butter cups, etc. So my goal was to pace myself. But you can't. In reality, right? It happens. Everything looks so good, so interesting, right? Whether it's plant-based, whatever. There are thousands of those. To sweets and cookies and water. So yeah, that part is challenging for sure.
I'm sure. So just to kick us off, What were some of the key insights and emerging trends in retail marketing that you just observed right off the bat when you were at the event?
From a trend perspective, I'll start with that. And it's so much centered on product and innovation and new formats. And there were three things that stuck out to me. Now, I'm a sample size of one, right? There are 60 plus thousand attendees. They probably all have a little bit different take. But what stood out to me were three things: protein in everything, chips, water, bars. So protein was big. Hydration, right? When you think about waters in boxes, in cans, in aluminum, and metal, and there's functional water, there was birch water, there was caffeinated water,
Oh my gosh.
probiotic shots. There's just all over. And then indulgence, which is, it's interesting, and it's probably a growing trend that I hadn't seen in the past so much. I think there's this, as the acceptance grows, people want to experience natural organic products in all phases of their consumption. And so again, peanut butter cups, honey and everything, cookies and chocolate covered everything you'd imagine, and protein in those cookies, back to protein. So, but those are the big three: protein, hydration, indulgence seem to be, to me, what stood out. From an insights, it's really interesting going for 2.5, 3 days, having a lot of conversations with emerging brands that are established, is that it's still a battlefield out there, right? Even more so than it ever has been before. And there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat still going on, in a sense of like fighting for shelf space, fighting for distribution. Hey, you're in, and there's such an uphill battle to get that off shelf then display, to try to drive some level of incrementality. And so just all that challenges on production and supply chain, right? Just everything is difficult for these brands, right? So it's hard. It's when I had those conversations with them about marketing, sometimes a couple times it was during the headlines, right? Because they're so focused on just that day-to-day grind of keeping product on shelf. So there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to our next question. You're leading right into it, is how are these brands leveraging retail marketing strategies to connect with consumers and drive sales? I mean, if it's deer in the headlights when you're starting to talk marketing, are they looking for advice and direction, or have some of them jumped kind of onto a strategy here and there and they're just running with it?
It's a great question. I think there's the emergence of digital, which everyone's going to say is the answer, of course, right? But that's table stakes now, right? It's not a plus to have a social media team. That's a given. You have to have, right? And understanding your presence online is so key. I think there are a lot of brands looking to leverage QR codes in an entirely new way. And discussions with a service provider named Bridge, I just find fascinating in terms of that. And you could see the QR codes on everything. It was on packaging. It was on how the exhibitors in the booth would engage with people who are coming by. Hey, scan this QR code, scan this, do this, right? So like on packaging, on shelf blades, they had examples of it. So you're just seeing that more and more as a way to like, how do I engage with consumers? How do I catch that consumer walking down the shelf in a whole new way?
What do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges for brands looking to navigate the evolving retail landscape, particularly in natural products, which is what Expo West was for? But what are their big opportunities and what are their big challenges?
The opportunities are the general awareness and acceptance of natural and organic, right?
And it
Versus
seems
you
to be
look at 2 or 3 years
very
ago, 5 years ago.
noisy.
Yeah.
Just the space in itself, like you said, there's wall-to-wall attendees, which means there's going to be wall-to-wall booths, and there's just a million products out there, so it's so noisy.
Yeah, it was really you can tell just walking down the booth though what brands realized the fight they were getting into and the challenge, right?
Really?
How do I catch that person how do I get that buyer who may be walking down, or that category person, to stop at my booth? Right. So really thinking through the creative and how they're engaging and how they create that booth layout. You can tell the ones who really thought through how to break through that noise and how to draw people in, versus those that didn't give it that deeper thought.
Okay, well, then tell us, how can they effectively leverage retail to enhance their brand experience and engagement with consumers?
When I was at the show, some things stuck out to me, and I think it relates to this question a lot, is that it was very clear which brands were really buying into being authentic with their customers, right? And so it was interesting, and we hear it in marketing a lot and brands and how social media is changing, but it really kind of was really on display for brands of who they are, and this is us, and we're not for everyone, right? And not trying to be a product that's for everyone. This is who we're for, and so some more clarity around that. So I think that's one of the ideas I had of like just walking through and go, oh, well, that's a brand that I want to engage with. But the bigger thing I saw was that I took from the show was that there's this interesting dynamic of, hey, you want to do something really flashy. You want to have this story. You want to be able to say how organic you are or how natural your product is. But do you potentially lose the fact of, or lose sight of who the customer is and how they're engaging with the product, right?
Mhm.
Because first and foremost, especially for food, it's flavor, right? And it's price or value, right? And you can have this amazing story in the background of how organically or how, you've sourced your products from this Indian tribe who's the last one on earth. But if the product
But if it
doesn't
tastes
taste,
awful, who cares?
so it's that authenticity. It's
Uh-huh.
that keeping that customer at the forefront and what their needs are. Are you really serving a need, or are you just trying to create something flashy and
Natural
trendy?
and organic
Right.
and good for you, but you don't really have the consumer in mind, and you kind of get lost in that.
I got a
Right.
question, Justin. So one of the things that is from an outsider's perspective is it feels like a lot of these brands are leaning into their founder's story because there's a level of relatability, if that's a word, but it seems to be that it's really specific in the natural products for obvious reasons. But did you recognize that being immersed in the natural products event? Was there a lot of founders that were the billboard's advocates? What was your thoughts on that?
It wasn't over the top, but I'll give you a few examples. I do think it was evident, and I think it is critical for these brands. And I think they bought into that, whether it's the authenticity, right? I mentioned before that plays into that, but you mentioned Cheers and Brooks,
Mhm.
right there with his wife and a toddler.
Oh
That's
my
all.
goodness.
Yes.
He was
Right.
one with I knew there was somebody.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember who it
right.
was.
And I walked by 3 times hoping to say hi, but they're always busy. Just at it, right? And looked engaged and excited. So that was one. Midday Squares,
Yeah,
right,
that's a good
is
one.
another, that founder story. And for those who follow them on LinkedIn, we know all the ups and downs that they go through, and it's an amazing
Mhm.
journey. But they were there, right? So you see, and kind of what I found really interesting is like they're not just there; they're working. They're carrying in the ice bags to refill the coolers. They're restocking samples. So it's not just a pretty face or that. I mean,
Not just shaking hands. They're
right.
really in the trenches.
They're in the brands. Guru Nada is another one. And just every time I walk by, he had 4 people around him, right?
Mhm.
People
Mhm.
excited to hear his story and talk to him.
Yeah.
So I think that is, I think we're just going to continue to see that trend, right? The
Mhm.
the ability to get that story out now is so much easier than it was 10 years ago.
Yes,
And you
especially with
can't
social.
hide, right? Whether it's, a B2C or B2B, like, humans crave human connectivity. And so, no longer can the CEO of a company just sit in the Eiffel Tower and have
Mhm.
zero visibility, because at that point, their brand doesn't feel relatable. And so I think that's been fascinating to see how this has been even played out into actually producing their founder stories on the end caps of the displays and telling that story there. I know we've raved about Boom Nutrition. I've seen them at the show. I know that
Mhm.
they have probably a little bit bigger budget than some of the other ones we talked about, just based on the activation that I saw online of that show. But I think that's one that continues to stand out to me of just truly leaning into that founder-led story. And even now you go into Target or Walmart and she's featured on the end cap. So that story is coming through, not digitally, but also it's being communicated, in physical spaces as well. So I'm excited to see if that trend continues on, because I think it just is the relatability with the emergence of AI. I think the relatability of who is leading these companies and what is their why, regardless of your company, is a craving that we all have.
Mm-hmm.
I
Definitely.
agree.
And
They want that transparency.
definitely.
Yep.
They want to know the
I think they have
motive.
to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to what I would assume was just all over the place being a natural products event. Sustainability and ethical practices. How were brands getting that messaging out there? How were you receiving it? Because some of that's been around for a while, and is it kind of losing its impact, or were they jumping on a different bandwagon for those channels?
So it's another interesting dynamic, right? Because you're there, and the expectation is you're at a natural and organic food show, right? So, but I think that the awareness and the acceptance levels are so high that it's not the key message. So much so to where there were 2 or 3 conversations I had where they specifically said we have pulled some of our claims off of the front of our packaging, not off the packaging completely, but just there was.
It just becomes too much when there's 9 or 10 bullet points for natural or organic or ethically sourced or vegan or whatever it might be. It kind of gets to be too much after a while.
It doesn't. It takes away from the product and the purpose and why I'm buying in. What, there was another package I remember where the claims are so big, I couldn't find the flavor of the product. I didn't know what it was, right? So it's interesting. Yes, it's important. We talk about transparency and authenticity. All that plays into fair sourcing. Yes, I don't think those trends are going away. They're becoming table stakes. It's just an expectation, right? And those brands that aren't transparent and aren't willing to share are going to start falling by the wayside.
Yes. Now, I know messaging is a big thing with those initiatives, but you and I had kind of a conversation when we were debriefing on the show about packaging in general and how that is speaking to sustainability. And you just kind of saw some things that really jumped out at you.
It's amazing, and I could be completely off on this hypothesis. I hope I'm not right, but at some point, I believe we're going to come to it like a packaging revolution, right? Of consumers finally standing up and saying, "No, I'm not going to pay for a chip bag that's this tall and weighs 2 ounces."
And is full
right?
of air.
There's so much air. Or when we think about laundry detergent, right? There's so much innovation coming where, and I'm not meaning to pick on any laundry brands, but there's
Concentrated
amount of
pods
water
are
in
a
there,
thing.
right? It's
Or
weight, it's plastic,
yeah.
it's space, it's all of those things. It's going to be really interesting to see, I think, when we finally connect all the dots of going, oh wait, this might not be a good idea.
I saw an interesting perspective from the show, and it was an image, but it was one of those, an image has 1,000 words or whatever. And it was specifically kind of on this topic, but the image was of the trash cans.
I saw that.
Overflowing
everywhere.
with sustainable,
trash. Yeah.
packaging and products and samplings, and it was like it had a bit of an aha moment, honestly, that it was a bit of a fascinating observation that someone else recognized, and that was the photo and that was the post. But kind of to your point, it's interesting,
right? And I don't have the solution either, and I figure if it was easy, every brand would be giving away samples in fully recyclable XYZ. But it was an issue. And it was really an issue which it was nice of them finally this year to put trash cans down an aisle that was, 200 yards long. So you didn't have to carry everything so far, but there was definitely a challenge. I don't know if it was a staffing issue or what, but significant overflow and made navigating those aisles even more difficult. But there was a lot of there were a lot of materials in those trash cans that you knew weren't going to the right place.
Yeah. Well, for emerging brands looking to enhance their retail marketing efforts, what advice would you offer based on your years of expertise and experience?
So from a strategic standpoint and at a high level, it's really, especially for these brands, right? There are 3,000 of them there and probably 2,000, 2,500. I wish I could get this message across clearly. Is like, you need to understand the investment you're going to have to make from a marketing perspective. And many times it becomes the third, fourth, fifth, sixth priority, and it becomes the first line item to start to turn down, right? Because I get it, right? They're producing product, they're having to worry about slotting fees, etc. But you cannot enter the marketplace expecting to spend on a percentage basis what, say, a Coke or General Mills does,
Mhm.
and break through and succeed. It's just not going to happen, right? You have to be 4, 5, 10x that from a percentage basis to break through. So that's the one thing, right? There's so much being invested in product development and all these things that cannot forget that. And of course, I'm a bit biased being a marketing guy, but it is that important from a practical, more tactical day-to-day perspective. Kind of two things jumped out to me, especially from the show. One is the real need for partnerships and alliances and advocates, right? They're small companies, they can't do it on their own. So the more you can build those and find either like companies or complementary companies or just people are going to lean in and help, that is critical. And the second thing, a little Ted Lasso call out, was to stay curious.
Yeah.
I love the show, but it's keep asking questions, right? I happened to come across a couple of brands who were like, hey, we do these two things and that's all we're going to do, or hey, I'm not really interested, without even asking more about XYZ, right? And so they start to become insulated and believe like we've got it all figured out, and no one does in life and business at all. So, those brands who keep asking and, keep pushing for new ideas, and those are the brands that are really going to stick out.
Yeah, definitely keep learning. Well, as we kind of wrap up with you, I'm just going to ask you one final question, and Trevor might have one, just because you and I debriefed, and I remember you talking about this, and kind of what is your advice to these emerging brands as they try to launch into retail? And I think I'm going to direct you a little bit, but you kind of had a who, what, and how scenario that you described to me.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Understanding that, really understanding the consumer journey, right? It's one thing to make a product that you think the buyer will like and it will sit on shelf, but understanding that piece of it is so key, and where those intersection points are. And it from there, it's thinking about the why, right? It's one thing to create this product and to produce all this, but if you're going to really want to engage with the consumer, it's not even really your why in some sense. It's that consumers of like, why do I need this? What problem am I solving for that consumer? Is it a real need, right, that I'm fulfilling? And then once you establish that, then it becomes, all right, where do I engage? What tools do I use? How do I do it? But those are all secondary, right? I see too many companies just jumping out, testing different tactics with no real strategy linked to it, right? And as long as you have that North Star, you understand the why, you understand your why, you understand the consumer need, then you can really start to direct and make those right decisions where to invest. Whether it's, okay, that product needs to be in someone's mouth so they can try it. So that is the key, and it's sampling. And that consumer is making that decision in store, so that's where I'm going to engage. There may be some categories where the consumer is making that purchase decision at home. A completely different mindset of how to engage with them, right? And where that intersection point is. So it's just that too many brands, unfortunately, today are missing the why and that linkage from that why to where they're investing in their retail marketing dollars to pay that off.
Awesome. I actually don't have any follow-up questions. You did a heck of a job of giving us some insights. I think my takeaway is, in addition to everything you outlined, is attention is critical, right? If you don't have attention, then it makes some of these other things that you may navigate very difficult. And so I'm excited to continue to kind of learn and observe, how you're assisting with some of these brands. But we're about to turn it up a notch. We're going to jump into
Sitting
our
on the hot seat.
lightning round. So this is where we ask you some questions. We ask all of our guests the same level of questions to get their input on how you behave as a consumer and what you do on your job and what you do to do your job better. So, my friend, are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
That's
All
usually the
right.
answer.
The first question is, what's one new brand you recently purchased and why?
It would have to be Olipop. So not a new brand to retail. Probably a lot of people have seen it. But I had given up soda. So I'd never kind of crossed my mind to try it. My mother-in-law had some at her house, and I'm a fan now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love what they're doing. Flavors are dead on. So no, kudos to them.
Oh, got it. Awesome. The next question. What's one thing you've bought on TikTok or IG?
Nothing on TikTok, shockingly. So I'll do an
Me
IG
either.
wrap up. And it was a Christmas present for my wife. It was the Tima blanket. They just did a hell of a job of kind of, highlighting the benefits. And it was very priced, but she was using it last night, kind of as a blanket while she was finishing a puzzle. So
Oh, good
getting
for
to
her.
me in.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. What piece of technology can you not live without?
My AirPods. That or the GarageBand app on
Oh,
my
yes.
those two.
Just because it just blocks out the kids, or
No, just writing music. I get to go into
Justin's very into music.
an instrument and just write. So it's kind of on my side passions.
one of my favorite questions to ask is, what's the worst career advice you've been given?
So let me make sure I get this right. You should live to work, not work to live. And it's that I heard that 25 years ago. It's still stuck with me. It was from a manager in retail. Sadly, he passed away from a heart attack. So I don't know if it's another reason not to follow that advice. But yeah, it stuck. It just like when I heard it, I didn't push back then because I was young, but I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. I, just try to do the opposite.
Yep.
And where do you go to consume information to do your job better?
It would two places, LinkedIn and podcasts like this, right? Or even more, honestly, more specifically, podcasts that are non-business related, stoicism, life, motivational, politics, just how to integrate those things I've learned that way into what I do. But since I mentioned podcasts, I do want to give these guys a quick plug.
Yeah, we need to give them a plug.
Podcastvideos.com. If you're in Northwest Arkansas, fantastic facility. You talk about turnkey. There's no even key. It was just
You just went in and sat down. Pretty much put the headphones. Yeah, we're gonna have to try that one out.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job here. So I'm very impressed.
And our last question, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Which wasn't very long ago, right?
Maybe last year.
Right, it's last week. Yeah. It's that probably that relationships will pay greater dividends than any monetary type investment.
I have to agree with that.
That's the takeaway of the career. Being able to go to Expo and see clients that I've never met in person, right? Or people that I met 6 or 7 years ago. That's why we do what we do. It's the
I mean,
people.
you and I are perfect examples of that. We've probably known each other for 10 years. You were my client at one time. Now we're partnered together for
Yeah,
strategy.
but
So, yeah, relationships mean everything.
it's the only way to make it through.
You don't want to do it by yourself, that's for sure.
So no, it's been great. I'm very blessed to have and met you 10 years ago. So
Yes,
I'm very
thank you.
thankful.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, hanging on the hot seat there with our lightning round, Justin. And folks, we're going to wrap things up, but to give you a little glimpse into our own minds, for me, it's a memo to myself. And for Christine, it's her I am for the day. We all know that all work and no balance leads to fatigue and burnout. So these are practices that we use each day to help keep ourselves centered and focus on what matters. So my memo for today is a little unique. But in today's business world, I believe leaders must grasp terms like standing on business. And what that means, if you're not aware, delivering on promise, not just words. For me, it shows awareness of the next gen culture. So I don't know if any of you are NFL fans, but specifically fans of DK Metcalf. He recently scored a touchdown this past season, and he did sign language of standing on business so that he didn't get fined.
Really?
So you'll have to go check that clip out
Yeah.
because again, it's standing on business. It's a way of delivering on your promise. And so in that moment, he felt he delivered on his promise of
He
scoring
did?
a touchdown. So he did sign language of standing on business.
Wow,
So I think
impressive.
that's an important thing to keep in mind. The other part of the memo to myself is you also have to understand EBITDA.
Yes.
So that's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Both of those are vital. And so for me, those are, just two different areas where you've got to keep a pulse on the culture. You've got to be able to also understand, the business and how it's operating. And so those were the memos to myself because you've got to continuously kind of navigate both of those to be kind of that next day, modernized leader. So, Christine, tell me what's up with your I am for the day.
My I am for the day, and my I am comes from a group of my tribe, my accountability partners. Every morning while we're drinking our coffee and having breakfast, we all text each other and say, what are you today? And today I am focused because I'm just busy with events. I'm busy with virtual meetings. I'm busy with in-person meetings. I'm busy juggling all of what business is with being a mom and travel baseball and all of that entails. So today I just telling myself, stay focused, because it's so easy to derail and just get lost in all of it. And then it's just a mess. So I am definitely focused.
And girl, you're definitely focused. She sent me a list of all the things that she was focused on. And
I send the list more for my benefits
it's like,
than for
that's
yours.
a focus list. All right, Justin, we're gonna put you back on the hot seat. I know I said I was just gonna let you off, but we're gonna ask you, or Christine's gonna ask you, what your I am is.
Yes. What is your I am for the day? What are you today?
It's a great question.
Expect
Thought I
it
was off
later
the
in a
hot
text.
seat. I am thankful.
That's a
right?
good one.
It's yes, we're busy, right, and running kids, trying to get
Yes, you're
kids
running
everywhere,
kids too.
but we're blessed that we get to do this, and family is healthy, and we have food on the table, and those things that a lot of people don't have, and it's hard. It's easy to lose sight of that, but no, I think.
Good. There's always something to be thankful for. That's kind of my motto.
I totally agree. And my friends, that's going to be it for this week's show. My man Justin, big thanks for being our guest and bringing all those nuggets to the table for us. We're definitely grateful to have all of you along for the ride, as well as lighten up your hustle through retail and real life.
So thanks for listening, and keep your questions and comments coming. We love tuning in to what you want to know about helping your brand stand out in store. Join us for next week's episode, where we will dig into the role of the consultant and why this role isn't going away anytime soon. This podcast is a production of In-Store Design Display. the go-to expert for guiding and elevating your in-store experience. Our wordsmith, Julie Edge, and mixmaster, Jackie Barra, make all of this possible. So a big thanks to them and the entire team at In-Store Design Display.
Stay tuned for our next episode on YouTube or wherever you consume podcasts. We'd love to hear from our listeners, so please drop us a line and tell us what you want to hear about retail and real life.